WotC is releasing Ravnica Remastered, and it's going to be released in January 24. The set is going to cover 13 different sets and be spanning 16 years of Magic history. But who is actually going to be excited for Ravnica Remastered? And is the set actually just going to be underpowered wine in new bottles? Let's get into it.
WotC is branding this product on being fully draftable, so you can play with your friends and you can have a lot of fun. But at what cost? We'll get back to that later on. For this set, we're going to have a borderless anime variant, and that has been pretty popular. We're going to have a retro frame. We're going to have the retro frame with the shooting star foil, and we're also going to have a borderless art on many of the cards in this set. And of course, we will also see serialized cards in this remastered product. And we've also seen it on the card Niv Mizzet, which could indicate that we're going to see it on several other of the important cards. This has become Wizards' new standard way of trying to create some chase cards in these products. But the question is it working?
Tapping into older sets and spanning such a long history of Magic products is often a good way to enhance the nostalgia and the feeling of nostalgia in players. But it is not always a good idea when it comes to the cards themselves, because over a period of time power creep becomes a real thing, and that is also evident in the cards that we have seen so far in Ravnica Remastered. They have shown us Massacre Girls, Niv Mizzet Pharaon, and Birds of Paradise. Even though these cards are popular, they are not the powerhouses they once were, and they have been printed a lot of times. For instance, Birds of Paradise have 42 printings, and 10% of these printings have been in just two sets, The Lord of the Rings and Dominaria Remastered. And it might not be the most desirable card for players in a new remastered set. So what is actually going to drive interest for new players in Ravnica Remastered? The answer is easy: the shock lands. The shock lands are great lands, and they are powerhouses of themselves. The shocklands are coming in all the variants, and it's going to be gorgeous to see those Rob Alexander lands reprinted another time. But shocklands are not as expensive as they once were, and new printings will of course drive the prices down, even though you might be lucky to get a lottery ticket and get a serialized shockland. The shocklands are also going to be reprinted in the Murders of Karlov Manor in a special Clue edition. So we're going to see a lot of shocklands printed in a really short amount of time. And that is of course going to hurt the collectability. So the question still stands: who is actually going to buy Ravnica Remastered? And we have tried to make a little outline of different player types that might be interested in buying this set.
What kind of player are you? Are you going to buy that collector box, the draft box, or are you just going the singles route? Let us know down in the comment section. And while you're there, just hit that like button on your way. Thank you. The first player type or type in Magic the Gathering would be the collector. The collector is probably not going to be interested just based on the shocklands. Maybe if they're especially looking for those serialized shocklands and can afford to buy a lot of boxes to try and hit one of them. But otherwise, the collector already has the shocklands and perhaps also in the original edition, so they're not interested in a newer reprint, presumably at least. And it's worth mentioning, the shocklands are already very affordable. These are not $50 to $100 cards. Most of them are around $10, so they should already be very affordable for most of us. So for the collector, it's not going to be very interesting. They are already really affordable for the players. The collectors already have the old version, and long term, this is just going to be a part of Wizards devaluing their collection that they've maintained for many years, and it's also going to hurt the reprint equity for Wizards of the Coast going forward.
Next player type is the commander player. And commander players, they do love their lands, especially powerful lands like shocklands. In theory, this player type should just love to see a new reprint of the shocklands, but not necessarily, because this player also have a big collection, and presumably they already have a lot of shocklands. Of course, they might like to hoard a lot of new shocklands for future decks, but right now, this player is not interested in buying a complete box, only to try to get those few shocklands. They are probably just going to pick up the singles, so even though the commander player might be interested in the shocklands themselves, they might not be the first player type to actually buy a box of Ravnica Remastered.
The draft player might be the most likely player type to pick up a box of Ravnica Remastered, a draft box at least, so that they can draft with friends, play sealed, and just have fun and either experience for the first time or relive the good old days of the Ravnica blocks. But this player is probably not going to be picking up a collector box, not a very expensive one, and most likely this player would also be a bit annoyed of the new pricing on the draft experience because remastered products have tended to be a bit more expensive than the regular draft box. And also, if you're buying a draft box and it immediately tanks in price, it might be a feels bad, and they might do that because having the serialized shocklands only in the collector box could put some downward pressure on the draft box.
Next player type is the player. And this player is interesting in having a lot of cheap cards. Well, actually, the cards cannot become cheap enough. They want the game pieces and they just want to play and build decks and they want to get in as cheaply as possible. So for them, it's a great thing that shocklands are being reprinted and it's a great thing that cards are just going down in price. But this player is not liked to buy a complete box of Ravnica Remastered. It is simply not sensible for them. Just pick up the singles you need and go play with your friends and build all the decks you want. Because if you buy a box, you are probably going to lose a lot of money since most Magic boxes are not going to hold value. And if you have any doubts about this, you can just go watch the professor do a booster box game and there should be no doubt in your mind that opening a box of Magic is not a good idea for the value or your wallet.
So one type that might be very interested in picking up particularly the collector boxes of Ravnica Remastered is the gambler type. This type really loves the idea that you might, what if, you could just pull that really cool serialized shockland, and they really enjoy just opening boxes and seeing what they get. And if you can afford it, hey, that's cool, go enjoy it. But unfortunately, the gambler's fallacy is still there. You might pull it, but chances are you probably won't. And in the end, you might spend more money trying to pull a serialized card than you would just buying it later on. Even though the cards have turned out to hold their value pretty nicely in terms of serialized cards, it's still a very expensive ride to go out and see if you can find that one lottery ticket. But what if in the end you end up just having a bunch of course, very nice shocklands, but also a lot of underpowered older cards that you really can't play anymore because a lot of them have been power crept. Do consider spending your money wisely. It is very difficult to pull those serialized cards.
From our perspective, it's really hard to see who Wizards have in mind trying to market Ravnica Remastered. Right now, it's hard to see who's actually going to be interested in buying those really expensive collector boxes and who's going to buy the draft boxes, because they seem to miss the mark on almost all points. Wizards is of course going to market this as the set where you can get serialized shocklands for the first time. But is this a fix-it-all, or is it simply a Hail Mary to try and make an unsellable product seem good?
And of course, it also becomes an increasingly difficult problem trying to buy a Magic the Gathering box and getting your value out of it. More likely than not, you're going to lose up to 50% of the value and sometimes even more when you crack open that box. You should really remember that you can buy singles. They are available in most countries and you can buy them a lot more affordably, and you're certain that you're going to get precisely the singles that you are looking for. But on the other hand, if you weren't around to play Ravnica and you really want to try and get the vibe and the feel of that experience of drafting, I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun and we really hope that you will enjoy it.
Indeed. If you're also looking forward to see what Wizards have in store for us in 2024, you can go watch our video up here, where we go over all the sets that are going to be released next year.
So thank you for watching, and thank you to all our YouTube channel members and Patreon members. Your support means all the difference to us, so thank you so much.